In today's video, I have a variety of NHL trade rumors I want to discuss with you here today, including teams like the Nashville Predators, Calgary Flames, St. Louis Blues, and Toronto Maple Leafs, plus Blues defenseman Robert Bortuzzo has been suspended for 4 games. We'll discuss what happened, as well as the suspension, coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of news and rumors to discuss here today, and let's kick things off with the suspension to Blues defenseman Robert Bortuzzo, which was just announced here in the last little while. He's been suspended by the NHL for 4 games. NHL Player Safety just recently, in the last hour, put out their ruling that Robert Bortuzzo, because of a cross-checking incident against Predators forward Victor Arvidsson, is given a 4-game ban. Now, because of the cross-checking history that he has, he is considered a repeat offender, which is why the punishment might be more severe than you think. If you didn't see the play, I'll put a link to the NHL Player Safety video down below so you can see the play and listen to their explanation. But essentially, Robert Bortuzzo comes in, Arvidsson's gone to the net, he comes in from behind and cross-checks him into the net, which itself is only a penalty. That is not the offense that ends up getting him suspended. He then looks at the referee in frustration, kind of can't believe it's being called, which really, it's clearly a penalty. There's no doubt about that. But then with Arvidsson laying on the ice in a rather vulnerable position, which the NHL Player Safety Department does acknowledge in their video, he then cross-checks him hard again down in the lower back area, which is the play that ends up resulting in the suspension. That itself is an extra shot out of frustration. That's not a hockey play, and that's why they ended up suspending Bortuzzo. And like I said, he's a repeat offender, which is why his suspension might seem more severe. Somebody with no history might have only gotten 1 to 2 games in that situation, but because of his history, he's given a 4-game ban. So like I mentioned, the link to the NHL Player Safety video will be down in the description. So let me know what you think down in the comment section, if you think this suspension is fair, justified, too much, or what you think down in the comments. Now, as I mentioned, I have some NHL trade rumors I'd like to discuss here today as well, including the Nashville Predators. Now, the Nashville Predators are a team we've discussed on multiple occasions due to their slow start. I mean, they did get off to the early part of the season doing relatively well, but then things have kind of gotten off the rails here a little bit, and right now they find themselves outside of the playoffs, and there's many questioning whether or not there could be some serious changes coming to the Predators. As we know, General Manager David Poile is not afraid to be aggressive. He's not afraid to make big moves, and could we possibly see one coming soon, whether it be with the on-ice personnel or possibly even in the form of a coaching change. Now, athletic writer Adam Vingan, who covers the Predators, has a recent article out discussing the fact that he feels Peter Laviolette might be wearing out his welcome in Nashville, and perhaps a coaching change might be in order. He's been with the team for quite some time, and a lot of coaches, usually after about 5 years, is kind of the average shelf life for a lot of coaches when they start to kind of weigh on players, and then the message starts to become less effective over time. So we'll see what happens if David Poile would consider a coaching change or not. I mean, at the same time, it's been rumored that Kyle Turris is a player that he'd love to trade with that $6 million contract. He's been a healthy scratch numerous times here this season already. So clearly that's a move that likely would help shake things up. There's been all kinds of line juggling going on, which obviously is something that you do see a lot when a team is struggling, but Laviolette's had a hard time kind of finding that right mix of players playing with each other, and one combo that has worked well is like Duchesne with Philip Forsberg, and he really doesn't seem to put them together as often as many think he should based on what's referenced here in this article. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are on the Nashville Predators. Could we possibly see a coaching change? Obviously, with a name like Mike Babcock available out there and some other interesting possibilities who could be looking for work, could we see some more NHL coaches possibly be on the way out? As we've seen with the Maple Leafs making their change now, we saw the Blues make that same change on the exact same day last year, a year ago, and look what happened to them. Craig Ruby led that team to a Stanley Cup. I do think if there's teams that are considering making a coaching change, that they're not going to be waiting too long so they can have a shot at salvaging their season before it slips away too far, and they can make a run here to make sure they get back into a good standing so they can make the playoffs and hopefully have a shot at the Stanley Cup, because ultimately that's their goal. But could changes be coming to the Predators, and could it possibly be as a coaching change, or could it most likely be a trade like a Kyle Turris or something that's already been discussed? Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments. We can discuss further. Now, the Calgary Flames are a team that we've talked about lately as well, possibly trading star player Johnny Gaudreau. What about the coaching staff? Could there be some trouble there? And really, at this point, General Manager Brad Treliving has kind of come out and put some cold water on all of that. He's kind of taking a lot of the heat himself and said that he needs to be better and that the coaching staff is not going anywhere, and he does not intend to trade any star players. Now, he didn't rule out saying he wouldn't trade anybody and make anything to shake up the roster or shake up what they have for personnel there, but ultimately he did put a lot of the blame on his own shoulders, and he really took the heat for his coaching staff and star players. So obviously I wouldn't expect anything too significant out of Calgary. I know a lot of the Johnny Gaudreau talk, like I said before, probably a little bit premature, but at the same time, at some point when teams do not have a chance to consistently win and be successful, then obviously all things become questioned, and obviously at some point you got to consider making a more radical change. But the Flames appear to be not quite there as of yet from a management's view. So I do think other players, like we discussed before, whether it be blue liner Travis Hamonic, even forwards like Mark Jankowski, for example, or even Oliver Kylington, who's looking for more and more opportunity as well. Those could be the types of players that we see the Flames make some trades, maybe make a minor shakeup to try to give them a jolt here. But ultimately, we can expect that the coaching staff is going to have an extended period of time to get the things turned around, and if they're going to make any kind of big moves with any star players, it's not likely going to be anytime soon. Well, we'll see how the season goes. Maybe we'll see more of a shakeup on the offseason if things don't get any better in Cowtown. Now, as we discussed before as well, the Washington Capitals have a couple of big-time players with Nicholas Backstrom and Braden Holtby who are pending unrestricted free agents because of their overall salary cap situation. Is likely going to prove to be rather difficult to retain both of their longtime players. And right now, it looks as though Backstrom, in my opinion, is more likely to return than Holtby. Holtby's having a pretty decent year, and if he continues to have a solid season, he could be cashing in using goaltender Sergei Bobrovsky as a comparable in next year's free agent market, which is likely going to prove way too expensive for the Capitals, especially when they have young goaltender Ilya Samsonov, who's kind of waiting in the wings and has done well when given an opportunity this year as well, and could be the heir apparent to Braden Holtby as a Capitals starter. However, center iceman Nicholas Backstrom is a little bit older, a little bit more on the back end of his career, have been having extension talks with the Capitals. Things there seem to be going very positively, and the progression has been made on a potential extension. I would guess it would be maximum 5 years, probably less. More than likely 3 or 4 year term would probably make more sense for both the team and the player. Something that's a reasonable amount of money. I mean, Backstrom's still a very productive player. Wouldn't be surprised to see him, even take a small pay cut, whatever he needs to do to kind of secure himself another contract. That's semi long term, but yet at the same time make sure that the team is not handcuffed and can spread enough money around to make sure they have a very competitive team for the duration of his career. Based on what they have there now and other players locked up, I think the Capitals are still going to be remaining to be a force here for a few more years for sure, if not longer. They're in pretty good hands that way, so we'll see. But progress is being made, and Nick Backstrom likely sticking around with the Capitals beyond the current year. Now, jumping over and taking a look at the Blues and the Leafs. Now, there was a report on Saturday headlines with Elliot Friedman and Chris Johnston that Blues general manager Doug Armstrong has actually been taking in some Maple Leaf games, and the last one he took in was just this past weekend with his VP of Hockey Operations, Dave Taylor. When you see two hockey executives from a rival club show up to watch a game like that when their team is not, in the building and they're not going to be playing anytime soon, it certainly raises some eyebrows and gets people talking. And it's not the only time that the Blues have been watching the Leafs closely this year. There have been other times, numerous times apparently, when the Blues have had some of their senior scouts attending Toronto Maple Leaf games as well. So it looks as though the Blues are keeping a very close eye on the Toronto Maple Leafs, and maybe there has been some chatter about those two teams maybe even hooking up on a trade. There's been lots of talk that goes back to last year, before the Blues really got things turned around. There were some rumors about Alex Pietrangelo to Toronto. Of course, that never came to be. The Blues went on to win the Stanley Cup, and right now, a player like Alex Pietrangelo, for example, the Blues captain, is a pending unrestricted free agent. Now, of course, the Leafs have a pretty significant player on the blue line as well, who's also a pending UFA in Tyson Barrie. And of course, with the coaching change and Sheldon Keefe taking over, Barrie has really turned it on and has played way better and been much more productive in the last couple of games since that's taken place. Now, I would think that with everything going on with Toronto, that maybe a week ago before the Babcock firing, they would have been more likely to make a semi-significant trade to try to shake things up and get them under their funk and their losing streak, but obviously this coaching change has seemed to kind of shoot some energy into this team. Babcock's no longer there. Keefe's made some changes, and so far they seem to be having fun, seem to be a little bit more loose, and they seem to be having more fun, and obviously winning a few games. Now, of course, it's a long season. I do think the Leafs have some other issues they need to work on. I think coaching was part of the problem, but it's certainly not everything. They do have some other areas of their team that could use some improvement, and maybe the Blues would make a good trade partner, especially at the forward position, given the current long-term injury situation. And I would assume that the Maple Leafs would probably want to add something a little bit more significant on the back end, on the blue line here, so they very well could possibly be good trade partners. The Maple Leafs have all kinds of forwards that are interesting choices to possibly be moved if they want to upgrade their back end, and the Blues have some interesting choices on the blue line that could be traded as well. So I guess we will see, but certainly two teams to keep an eye on: the Stanley Cup champion St. Louis Blues, the resurgent Toronto Maple Leafs under Sheldon Keefe. I would think more than likely with the coaching change now that Kyle Dubas is probably going to hold off for a little while, at least, making any kind of significant trades on Toronto's side, see how everything goes with the new head coach. But I think as we get closer to the deadline, that they're definitely going to want to make some upgrades. We've heard it said numerous times this year that this is a very important big year for the Maple Leafs to make some big progress, and I do think that they're going to likely go all in as we get closer to the trade deadline, assuming things remain positive and they keep getting themselves back on track here under their new head coach. But I guess if they do want to make a trade, they can look to their rival St. Louis Blues, who's been watching them rather close. If these two teams were to hook up on a trade, what do you think the Blues are really looking at, and what would they want from the Maple Leafs? Give me your mock trades down in the comment section and we can discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.